Chapter 1. The Epiphany and the Pivot. Lin Yu's fingers hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking on a spreadsheet that seemed to stretch into eternity. The clock on his screen glowed, 9:47 p.m. The Shun Corporation tower was silent, a tomb of polished steel and ambition, save for the low hum of servers and his own weary sigh. He had 3 reports to finish before midnight, all because CEO Shin Yuan had decided, at 7 p.m., that he needed a comprehensive market analysis of sustainable bamboo toothbrushes in Scandinavia by morning. Because diversification is key, Lin Yu, Shun had said, not looking up from his phone, his voice the same cool, indifferent baritone he used to order coffee or approve multi-million-dollar mergers. Diversification. Lin Yu snorted softly. His life had no diversification. It was a monoculture of Shun Yuan. Shun's schedule, Shun's dry cleaning, Shun's irrational whims, Shun's everything. He saved the spreadsheet, grabbed the freshly printed, physically bound Scandinavian bamboo report, Shun liked tangible things for late-night reading, and took the private elevator to the penthouse. The keycard felt heavy in his pocket. This was part of the job, the 24/7 access, the blurred lines between professional and personal servant. He entered the penthouse's opulent silence. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the minimalist furniture. He placed the report on the obsidian desk and turned to leave. A sound, a soft, flustered gasp from the direction of the kitchen. Peering around the corner, Lin Yu froze. There, in the soft glow of the under-cabinet lighting, was Bai Shui from the new marketing cohort. She looked ethereal, her eyes wide with panic, holding a shattered porcelain mug. At her feet, a dark pool of coffee spread across the imported Italian tile. And there was Shun Yuan standing close. Too close. He wasn't in his usual austere suit jacket, just a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up. His expression was uncharacteristically gentle. "It's just a cup," Shun was saying, his voice low, a tone Lin you had never heard before. "Are you hurt?" "And no, Mr. Shun. I'm so sorry. I heard you were working late, and I thought. I brought the wrong file earlier, and I wanted to buy." Shui stammered, her cheeks flushed a perfect, rosy pink. "Don't worry about the file." Shin took a step closer, his hand reaching out, not to take the broken shards, but to gently steer her away from the mess. "It was brave of you to come all the way up here to correct it. Let me." Lin Yu watched, a silent specter. The scene was illuminated like a stage play. The handsome, powerful CEO, the beautiful, clumsy, sincere new employee, the intimate kitchen lighting, the shattered prop that brought them together. It was so blatant, so painfully cliché, it felt scripted. And in that moment, the script downloaded into Lin Yu's mind. He saw it all. The upcoming company retreat where they'd get stranded together. The charity gala where Bai Shui would charm everyone with her unpolished honesty. The jealous rival who would target her, only for Shun to heroically intervene. The misunderstandings, the late-night rescues, the inevitable soft glances that would harden into devotion. And he saw his own role, the ever-present, efficient assistant, the one who facilitated their meetings, cleared Shin's schedule for their accidental lunches, the one who would, one day, be asked to deliver a letter or a gift that would be misinterpreted. The one Bai Shui would see one too many times in Shun's space, a silent, loyal shadow she could never quite read. The seed of jealousy would be planted. A whispered word from a rival, a conveniently timed photo, a moment of insecurity. Shun would not choose him. Shun would choose the light, the warmth, the story of Bai Shui. And the loyal, potentially problematic assistant, he would be removed. Not just fired, blacklisted, made an example of to reassure the new love. A clean break. Cannon fodder for the main romance. The epiphany didn't bring panic. It brought a profound, chilling clarity. The axe was already hanging above his neck. The when and how were details. His fate was a foregone conclusion. He slipped out of the penthouse, unseen. Back at his desk, the hollow dread morphed into something else, a liberating, cold fury. If he was destined for the trash heap, he would at least pillage the pantry first. He opened a new document. The title, the Mind My Business Plan. Primary objective, Maximize total financial compensation and skill acquisition prior to termination event. Secondary objective. Minimize all non-essential emotional and time expenditures related to primary subject, Xinyuan. Method. Optimization of subject's workflow to create shielded time blocks for external revenue-generating activities. Total emotional disengagement. Treat subject as a complex, high-value API. Interface with efficiency. Expect no meaningful data in return. Exit strategy. Build freelance portfolio and emergency fund to ensure zero-gap employment upon termination. He listed his marketable skills: graphic design, fluent coding in 3 languages, translation, copywriting. He signed up on 3 premium freelance platforms. He spent the rest of the night not on Shun's work, but building his profiles and portfolios. As dawn tinged the skyline pink, Lin Yu looked at the Shun Corporation logo on his screen. It was no longer the emblem of his career. It was a piggy bank, and Xinyuan wasn't his boss, his crush, or even a person. He was a walking, talking ATM, and Lin Yu was about to withdraw every last C. NT. Chapter 2. The Human Excel Sheet. Phase 1. The plan began with ruthless efficiency. Lin Yu audited Shun Yuan's life as if it were a poorly managed subsidiary. He replaced Shun's chaotic, colorblind calendar with a sleek, integrated system. Meetings were categorized and color-coded: blood red for critical negotiations, steel gray for internal updates, a surprisingly chosen soft green for breaks. He imposed a buffer rule, a mandatory 15-minute gap between all engagements, to allow for strategic contemplation and travel. Mr. Shun, Lin explained, his voice a monotone of pure logic. He pre-screened emails with a triage system so effective that Shun's inbox was down to 10 essential messages a day. He hired, via his freelance network, a virtual assistant in another time zone to handle basic research and data formatting, paying them a fraction of his own salary and billing the hours vaguely to administrative support. Within a week, Xinyuan found himself with something he'd never possessed: free time. His days, which used to bleed into nights in a frantic blur, now had a rhythm, a cadence. He was more productive, yet less harassed. It was disconcerting. He called Lin into his office. The new system, Shun began, leaning back in his chair, studying his assistant. Lin stood perfectly poised, tablet in hand, gaze fixed a point just over Shun's left shoulder. It's efficient. Thank you, sir. I've projected a 22% increase in your decision-making bandwidth this quarter. Lin's response was immediate, data-driven. It's not just about bandwidth, Shun said, trying to summon the charismatic, visionary leader tone that made board members nod and junior staff blush. A company is a family, Lin Yu. Loyalty, passion, that's what drives innovation. Don't you feel that? A sense of shared purpose? Lin's eyes flicked to his for a millisecond. They were dark, clear, and utterly empty of the fanatic glow Shun was used to inspiring. My purpose is to optimize your efficiency, sir. To that end, I've reallocated the 30-minute buffer after your call with Tokyo. Would you prefer it be used for a preliminary review of the Q3 financial projections, or for scanning the industry briefs I've compiled? Shin was momentarily speechless. He'd just delivered his heart of the company spiel, and Lin had responded with a multiple-choice question about time management. The briefs, he managed. Noted. Lin made a mark on his tablet. Will that be all? Dismissed by his own assistant. Shin nodded, a strange irritation curling in his gut. Later that day, Shun passed by Lin's desk. Lin was typing, his focus absolute. On his main monitor was a complex spreadsheet, but on his secondary monitor, discreetly angled away from the aisle, Shin caught a flash of something else. Elegant vector curves, a palette of muted gold and deep blue. It was beautiful, artistic. What's that? Shin asked, coming to a stop. Lin's hands didn't freeze. He executed a swift, keystroke shortcut. The artwork vanished, replaced by a dense logistics plan for an upcoming product launch. The shipping timeline for the X project, sir. I was cross-referencing port delays. Shin knew what he'd seen. It wasn't a shipping timeline. But Lin's face was a placid mask of professionalism. Right. Carry on. He walked away, the irritation now mixed with a prickling curiosity. Lin was hiding something. Something that sparked a light in his eyes that Shen's multi-billion-dollar corporation did not. From his glass office, Shen began to watch. He saw Lin work with serene, untouchable focus. He saw him decline coffee runs with a polite, "I have a scheduling conflict." He saw him eat lunch at his desk, always alone, often typing something that didn't look like company email. And Shun saw the only time that serene mask ever cracked. A tiny, almost imperceptible upwards tilt of the lips, a slight brightening of the eyes. It happened once, when a finance VP was being particularly obtuse in a meeting and Lin solved his problem with a silent, two-line note. It happened again later that afternoon. Shin followed Lin's gaze. He was looking at his phone, discreetly below desk level. A notification, a payment notification, Shin realized. From Design Haven platform, payment received. The artistry, the secret focus, the joy at payment. A bizarre, desperate thought took root in Shun Yuan's mind. He was a man who could buy anything, command anyone, attract anyone. Yet he could not command a genuine smile from his own assistant. He was being outmaneuvered on the one battlefield he never considered, emotional economy. And he, Shun Yuan, was losing. Badly. Chapter 3. The ATM has a question. The obsession, once seated, grew like a weed in a crack of Shun Yuan's polished marble psyche. Lin Yu's indifference was a locked door, and Shun had always been taught that all doors opened for him, with money, power, or charm. This door, however, seemed to have no keyhole. He decided to test the hinges. Test 1. The sentimental heirloom. He misplaced his platinum fountain pen, a gift from his late father, and a prop he often used to signify gravitas. Previous assistants had turned the office upside down in tearful panic. Lin Yu, I've lost my pen. The Mont Blanc. Lin didn't look up from his screen. Check the inner left pocket of the jacket you wore to the charity auction last night, sir. You used it to sign the pledge form. I had the jacket sent for cleaning this morning. I'll recall it. He sent an email. 3 minutes later, a flustered concierge delivered the jacket. The pen was in the pocket. Crisis solved in under 5 minutes. Lin submitted an overtime log for the time spent, noting asset retrieval. For minutes 37 seconds. Test 2. The palate crisis. The coffee. It tastes wrong. Burnt. The beans are from the usual supplier, roasted on Tuesday, Lin stated. However, the water filtration system in the pantry was serviced yesterday. It may have introduced a mineral variance. I will order a sampler pack of 5 premium brands for a blind taste test to reestablish a preference. He didn't ask what was wrong. He proposed a systemic solution. Shin was presented with a spreadsheet rating acidity, body, and aroma by noon. Test 3. Direct provocation. Shin staged a minor meltdown over a perceived slight from a rival company, throwing a low-value stress ball against the wall. The sheer audacity. Do they think I'm a joke, Lin Yu? Lin watched the ball bounce, then picked it up and placed it neatly back in its ergonomic tray. Their market share has declined 4% this quarter. Their audacity is likely a performance for their own anxious board. Your 11:30 is here, sir. Shall I have them wait while you compose a strategic response? Or would you prefer to proceed and leverage this perceived slight as a negotiation tactic? Shin deflated. He wasn't being taken seriously. Not as a tyrant, not as a victim. He was a variable in an equation Lin was constantly solving. The breaking point came during quarterly bonuses. Shun, in a fit of misguided grandeur, added a staggering, unsolicited 50% bonus to Lin's pay. It was a king's ransom, a gesture meant to finally elicit gratitude. Awe, something. Lin opened the pay stub on his screen. Shin watched, holding his breath. Lin's eyes scanned the number. No widening, no gasp. His fingers flew over the keyboard. He looked up, his expression one of polite inquiry. Thank you, sir. For tax and future projection purposes, could you clarify if this bonus is categorized as discretionary annual performance, a one-time retention incentive, or tied to specific billable KPIs I should track for next quarter? Shun's world tilted. It was the coffee sampler all over again, but magnified. He had thrown a mountain of gold at Lin's feet, and Lin had asked about the geological classification of the rock. He was an ATM, a very, very high-yield one, and Lin Yu was merely checking the statement. That night, in his sterile penthouse, the truth was inescapable. People wanted Shen Yuan for his money, his influence, his body, his story. Lin Yu wanted only the output, the transaction. He was the only person in Shun's orbit who saw the man as utterly incidental to the function. And it was driving Shen Yuan, billionaire CEO, utterly mad with a desperate, inexplicable need. He needed Lin Yu to look at him like a person. Just on. See. Chapter 4. Freelance in the front, plot in the back. While Shun grappled with his existential crisis, the office around them continued to hum with the mundane buzz of corporate life and the soft, insistent pull of narrative fate. Bai Shui for marketing was blossoming. Her genuine warmth and unfiltered ideas, which initially raised eyebrows, began to win people over. She organized a birthday card collection for a janitor. She suggested a small, successful change to a customer feedback form. She was the humanizing touch the sleek, cold corporation unconsciously craved. And the plot, as Lin Yu thought of it, advanced with gentle inevitability. He observed it with the detached interest of a biologist watching a predetermined cellular process. He coordinated Shen's schedule to include a spontaneous walkthrough of the marketing department on the day of Bai Shui's presentation. He booked the charity gala venue and, per Shen's vague instruction, something thoughtful, ordered a modest donation in Bai Shui's name to a cause listed on her public social media. He facilitated their accidental, shared elevator ride when the main bank was under maintenance, a fact he'd learned about 3 days prior. He did it all with the serene efficiency of a stage manager. Shen and Bai Shui were the principals. He was the crew, making sure the lights hit their marks. His heart was a still, quiet lake. No ripple of jealousy, no pang of longing. Only the cool satisfaction of a task performed well, and the concurrent, more vibrant satisfaction of the freelance design project for an indie book cover open on his other screen. His secret work flourished. Under the name Studio Loon, he was building a reputation for sleek, evocative design. The ping of a payment notification, the happy ellipses from a satisfied client. You nailed the melancholy whimsy. These were his real rewards. They were his. Shun, meanwhile, was falling down a rabbit hole of his own making. He hired a private investigator. It felt absurd, even to him, but he had to know. What made Lin Yu smile? Who was the recipient of that secret, beautiful art? The report was devastating in its mundanity. Subject: Lin Yu. Observation: leads a highly disciplined, frugal life. No romantic entanglements observed. Social outings are rare and appear to be with former university colleagues. Primary non-work activity occurs on personal laptop at residence. Findings: subject operates under the pseudonym Studio Loon on several freelance platforms. Provides services in graphic design, UI/UX, and translation. Client ratings: 4.9/5. Earnings are substantial and growing. Appears to be building a standalone career. Conclusion: subject's primary passions appear to be professional autonomy, creative output, and financial independence. Sources of observed positive affect are correlated with successful project completion and client remuneration. Shun stared at the words. Professional autonomy. Creative output. Not a lover. Not a secret family. A side hustle. Lin Yu was so profoundly unimpressed by the Shun Corporation that he was building an escape hatch right under his nose, funded by the very salary Shun paid him. The irony was a bitter pill. The most fascinating person in his sphere found him less interesting than a logo design for a boutique tea company. He tried a new, disastrous tactic. During a meeting with Bai Shui about the charity gala, a meeting Lin had, of course, perfectly scheduled, Shin attempted to draw Lin into the conversation. Lin Yu, don't you think Bai Shui's idea for a silent auction has merit? Shin asked, trying to create a triangle to force Lin to engage personally. Lin looked up from his tablet. The projected revenue from a silent auction is 15 to 20% higher than a standard raffle, given our donor demographic. Ms. Bai's suggestion is statistically sound. I've already drafted a vendor shortlist for auction software. He delivered the verdict like a human algorithm, then returned to his notes. Bai Shui beamed at the support. Shen felt hollow. Lin had engaged with the idea, not the people. He'd validated the data point, not the woman. Later, Shun saw Lin at his desk, subtly zooming in on an intricate digital illustration of a fox sleeping in a nebula. For a split second, Lin's face was alight with quiet pride. It was the look Shun craved, directed at a collection of pixels. He was losing a battle he didn't understand to rivals he couldn't compete with, a freelance graphic designer in Berlin, a novelist in Seattle, a tech startup in Singapore. They got Lin Yu's passion. Shun Yuan, who held Lin's actual livelihood in his hands, got nothing but impeccable, soul-crushing efficient. Sigh. Chapter 5. The Jealousy Misdirection. The narrative tension, as if sensing a lull, decided to escalate. Charles Wan, CEO of the rival Novatech and a man with the smugness of a well-groomed weasel, made his move. At an industry mixer, he sidled up to Shun. Yuan, always a pleasure. That assistant of yours, quite the resource, isn't he? Charles said, sipping his scotch, remarkably plugged in. Knew about our Singapore expansion before we'd even filed the paperwork. One might wonder where his loyalties proliferate. The insinuation hung in the air. Corporate espionage. It was a classic play. Discredit the right hand to weaken the king. Shun's initial reaction was not suspicion of Lin, but a cold fury at Charles for his clumsy gambit. But before he could form a cutting retort, a voice, warm and firm, interrupted. That's impossible. Bai Shui had appeared, seemingly from nowhere, a glass of ginger ale in her hand. Her cheeks were flushed, but her gaze was steady. Lin Yu is the most loyal, ethical person at Shun Corporation. He works harder than anyone. He'd never do that. Mr. Wan, you must have misinformation. Shun stared at her. Her defense was impulsive, passionate, utterly sincere. It was the kind of blind, heartfelt loyalty he'd once expected from everyone and now received from no one, least of all from Lin himself. Charles raised a brow, amused. Such fervor. I merely posed a question, my dear. But the data leak did happen, and Yuan's assistant does have unprecedented access. He walked away, leaving poison in his wake. The plot had thickened exactly as Lin had foreseen. The rival's accusation. The love interest defense. Now, the CEO's test. Back at the office, Shun summoned Lin. He didn't ask about the leak. Instead, he watched. Lin listened to the accusation, his expression not shifting from its default state of attentive neutrality. I outsourced preliminary data formatting to a secured virtual assistant in a neutral time zone to optimize my workflow, Lin stated, as if reading from a security protocol. All data is anonymized and delivered in encrypted packets. The VA's access logs and the packet headers are available for audit. The Singapore expansion data was not part of any bundle I processed. The leak likely originated from Novatech's own overshared internal memo, which I can retrieve for you. It was widely CC'd. No anger, no hurt pride, just facts and a counterattack more devastating for its calmness. Shun believed him instantly, not because of the evidence, but because the idea of Lin leaking secrets for Novatech was laughable. Lin wouldn't waste the cycles. His freelance work was more profitable and far more interesting. But the public accusation required a public response. Shun, in a move that shocked the industry, launched an aggressive, multi-pronged legal and PR assault on Novatech. He exposed their shaky financials, sued for defamation, and poached 2 of their key engineers. It was a masterclass in corporate brutality. In the quiet after the storm, Shun went to Lin's desk. He felt an uncharacteristic urge to explain, to frame his draconian response as a gesture. Novatech won't be a problem anymore, Shun said, attempting to sound like a noble protector. No one questions your loyalty. Lin looked up. His eyes held no gratitude, no relief, only a faint, analytical curiosity. The counter-litigation will consume approximately 200 hours of legal team time this quarter. I've adjusted the departmental budgets accordingly. Was the primary strategic goal to deter future speculation or to acquire the engineers? The cost-benefit analysis differs based on the objective. Shun's heart sank. He had raised a kingdom to lay a rose at Lin's feet, and Lin was asking about the fertilizer. He had defended his assets' productivity, not his person. The transaction was preserved. The balance sheet was intact, and Xin Yuan had never felt poorer. Chapter 6. The System Breaks. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. Just as Lin Yu's Mind My Business plan was hitting its zenith, he was now seamlessly juggling 4 freelance projects during Shun's strategic contemplation buffers. Genuine, unscripted catastrophe struck. It wasn't a jealous rival or a misunderstood gift. It was a cold, tectonic shift in the financial landscape. The Vorpal Fund, a notorious corporate raider, launched a hostile takeover bid for Shun Corporation. They've been quietly accumulating shares, exploiting a temporary dip in the stock price caused by a global supply chain shock. Their offer was aggressive, their tactics ruthless. This was not in Lin's cannon fodder memory. This was real. The meticulously color-coded calendar exploded into chaos. Emergency board meetings bled into crisis calls with major shareholders. The legal department was a war room. The serene efficiency Lin had engineered shattered under the weight of sheer survival. For the first time, the plan was irrelevant. His freelance clients received polite, automatic messages about brief delays. His secondary monitors stayed dark. He didn't disengage. He leaned in, but not out of loyalty, out of a deeper, more personal imperative. His primary revenue stream was under existential threat. This was the ultimate portfolio risk, and he was, whether he liked it or not, all in on ShinCorp stock. He worked alongside Shun, not just for him. His talent for optimization, honed from managing Shin's life and his own secret double life, found a new target, the takeover defense. He identified redundant processes in the legal review, creating a streamlined doc-sifting pipeline. He used his freelance network to find a niche expert on Vorpal's past shady tactics. He cross-referenced shareholder data with social sentiment analysis, pinpointing who might be swayed. One night, deep into the 3rd consecutive all-nighter, there were the only 2 left in the executive suite. Spreadsheets and legal documents were strewn across Shun's desk, coffee cups littered like fallen soldiers. Shun's tie was loose, his hair uncharacteristically messy. Lin's pristine composure was frayed, a single lock of hair out of place. They'd just found a potential loophole, a clause in the company bylaws about shareholder voting thresholds that Vorpal might have misjudged. If we can rally the employee stock ownership plan block, Shin muttered, rubbing his eyes, and combine it with the Huang family's holdings, which are not as ironclad for Vorpal as they think, Lin finished, pointing to a line on a printout. The second cousin is heavily invested in green tech. Vorpal's fossil fuel ties are a vulnerability we haven't leveraged. Shin looked at him, truly looked. In the exhaustion, the masks were down. He saw not a robot, but a fiercely intelligent, strategic mind working in tandem with his own. The cold calculation was there, but it was no longer directed at him. It was directed with him at a common enemy. "Why are you doing this?" Shin asked, the question raw and unplanned. "This isn't in your job description. You could be designing Fox Nebulas." He'd read the PI report so many times he'd memorized it. Lin leaned back in his chair, the fatigue evident in the slight slump of his shoulders. He met Shin's gaze, his own guard lowered by exhaustion. The answer he gave was not from the plan. It was the unvarnished truth. "You're my highest-paying client. A hostile takeover usually results in massive executive and support staff restructuring." He stated it plainly. "My freelance income is robust, but not never work again robust. If Shun Corp falls, my primary income stream is disrupted. This is risk mitigation, portfolio defense." It was still a financial calculation, but it was a shared one. He'd said my primary income stream, not your company. For the first time, their interests were aligned not in a master-servant dynamic, but as two stakeholders in the same sinking ship, one of whom had a very detailed map. Shin didn't feel insulted. He felt seen. In his exhausted, vulnerable state, the sheer, brutal honesty of it was like a splash of cold, clear water. Lin Yu wasn't a martyr or a sycophant. He was a rational actor, and right now, rationality demanded they work together. A strange sound escaped Shun, a short, startled laugh, rough with tiredness. So, I'm a high-value asset in your personal investment portfolio? A flicker of something, surprise, maybe amusement, crossed Lin's tired face. The highest valued, and currently the most volatile. It's in my interest to stabilize you. Stabilize you. Not save the company. Stabilize you. Shin's laugh softened into something genuine. In the midst of the crisis, with everything falling apart, he felt a point of connection, fragile and real. It was built not on fantasy or obligation, but on mutual, transparent need. It was the best conversation he'd ever had. Chapter 7. The Offer and the Realization. The loophole held. The shareholder rally worked. After a brutal, month-long fight, Vorpal withdrew, its tenders snapping like overstretched rubber bands. Shin Corporation emerged bloodied but intact, its stock price already climbing on the news of the failed raid. In the victory celebration meets collapse that followed, Shin Yuan felt something he hadn't in years, a pure, unadulterated high, not from the money or the win, but from the memory of that war room alliance. The way Lin's mind had met his. The raw honesty in the dark. He'd seen a crack in the shell, and light had spilled out. He mistook the crack for a door he could now open wide. He called Lin into his office, the morning sun gleaming off the rebuilt city. Shin was buzzing, a man convinced he'd found the key. Lin Yu, he began, his voice warm with triumph. What we did, it was more than an employee and a CEO. It was a partnership. Lin stood quietly waiting. The crisis was over. The plan was reactivating in his mind. His freelance clients needed attention. I don't want to lose that, Shin said, leaning forward, his eyes bright. I'm creating a new position, Vice President of Strategic Operations. It reports directly to me. It has a corner office on this floor, and it comes with a salary and equity package that is, let's say, beyond competitive. He named a figure that was astronomical, life-changing. He presented it like a fairy tale ending. The ultimate reward. The gesture to end all gestures. He waited for the shock, the gratitude, the look. Lin Yu's face did change, but not into joy or surprise. It settled into something worse, profound, weary disappointment. The faint connection Shin had felt in the war room snapped. You're offering me a gilded cage, Mr. Shun, Lin said, his voice quiet and horrifyingly clear. A cage? It's the opposite. It's autonomy, influence. It's the opposite of autonomy, Lin interrupted, a rare breach of protocol. It would triple my hours. It would chain me to this building, to this floor, to you, more completely than ever before. It would consume every ounce of my mental energy with office politics, departmental budgets, and boardroom theatrics. I would have to care about the Shun Corporation family. I would have no time for my own work, my real work. Shun was stunned. This, your freelance designs? That's a hobby, Lin Yu. This is a career. This is legacy. Your legacy, Lin corrected gently. Not mine. You try to buy me, Mr. Shun. But I'm not for sale. I'm a contractor. You are my primary client. A very demanding, high-maintenance one, but a client nonetheless. He took a deep breath, the finality in the air. The takeover defense was my last major project for you. My notice was prepared weeks ago, contingent on the outcome. He placed a single, perfectly formatted letter of resignation on the desk. The date was from before the Vorpal attack, effective immediately. I've documented all ongoing projects and processes. The virtual assistant can be retained directly by the company. I wish you and Shun Corporation the best. He gave a slight, professional nod, turned, and walked out. Shin didn't call after him. He couldn't. The words gilded cage echoed in the silent, sun-drenched office. He looked at the obscene salary number on the offer sheet, then at the resignation letter. He had done the one thing Lin Yu despised. He had tried to own him, to consume him, to replace the diverse, independent portfolio Lin had built with a single, monolithic, golden shackle. He hadn't seen Lin at all. He'd seen a reflection of what he wanted, a brilliant mind, permanently installed for his own use. He had mistaken the battle-forged partnership for surrender. Lin Yu was gone, and for the first time, Shun Yuan saw the man with devastating clarity. Not a puzzle, not an asset, but a person who valued freedom above all else. And Shun, in his arrogant generosity, had just tried to strip him of it. The victory felt like ashes. The office, for the first time, felt not like a throne room, but a very empty, very quiet prison. Chapter 8. Off the clock on his own terms. The silence was the most profound change. Not the absence of chatter, but the absence of a specific, serene focus. Lin Yu's desk was empty, then filled by a competent, anxious young man who jumped at Shun's shadow. The hyper-efficient systems remained, but they felt hollow, automated. The soul of the machine was gone. Lin Yu, meanwhile, was thriving. Studio Loon was now his primary occupation. He worked from a sunlit co-working space or his apartment balcony, choosing projects that intrigued him. He designed logos for eco-startups, illustrated covers for philosophical sci-fi, built sleek interfaces for meditation apps. The ping of payments was a constant, cheerful melody. He was richer in time, sleep, and satisfaction than he'd ever been. Shouldn't try to move on. He followed the script half-heartedly, asking Bai Shui to dinner. She accepted, was lovely and kind, and spent 20 minutes extolling Lin Yu's quiet genius in organizing the charity gala logistics. Shen ended the evening early, pleading a headache. The script was bland, the pages empty. He began, awkwardly, to try to be human, not as a tactic, but as a penance. He apologized to the head of legal for his brusqueness during the takeover. He showed up at the charity 5K Bai Shui organized and ran it, anonymously, in the middle of the pack. He didn't issue a press release about it. He was terrible at it. He was stiff, uncomfortable, often misunderstood. But it was real. The idea came to him slowly. His mother's foundation, the one token of his family he genuinely cared for, needed a complete rebrand. It was outdated, associated with his father's colder era. He wanted something beautiful, meaningful, and discreet. The board had suggested big, flashy agencies. There was only one person he trusted to understand the nuance, to treat it with both artistry and respect. With a humility that was entirely new, he went to the Studio Loon website. He filled out the project inquiry form, not as Shun Yuan, CEO, but as Shun Yuan, private client. He outlined the foundation's mission, its history, his vision for its future. In the additional notes field, he wrote, his fingers clumsy over the keys. The designer should have full creative control. The budget is flexible, but the timeline is not urgent. The most important factors are the integrity of the design and the sustainable work-life balance of the designer. I have been a difficult client in the past. I am learning to be less of one. He hit send. It felt like throwing a message in a bottle into a vast, uncaring ocean. The reply came 2 days later. It was not from a generic info address, but from Lin Yu's personal professional account. Subject: Shun Foundation Rebrand Inquiry. Mr. Shun, I have capacity. Your terms are acceptable. Can you meet Thursday, 2 p.m. at the Quiet Corner Cafe? No exclamation points. No grand reunion. A simple acceptance of contract terms. Shun arrived at 1:55 p.m. The cafe was warm, full of the smell of beans and the soft clatter of keyboards. Lin was already there, at a corner table, a sleek laptop open. He looked different, still composed but softer. There was a lightness to him, an ease that had never been present in the tower. Shun sat. They exchanged nods. No, sir. No titles. Thank you for considering this, Shun began, his rehearsed words failing him. Lin gestured to the laptop. It's a meaningful project. I've done some preliminary mood boards based on your foundation's core themes of education and access. He turned the screen. The images were stunning, not cold or corporate, but warm, organic, full of light and subtle growth motifs. They were perfect. Shun's heart ached. This was Lin Yu's genius, unleashed on something he cared about. They're incredible. They're a starting point, Lin said, a hint of that professional focus in his eyes. But then he looked at Shun, really looked. He saw the lack of pretense, the careful wording of the inquiry, the man who had run a 5K for no PR gain. The man who was trying. A faint, genuine smile touched Lin's lips. It was small, but it was real. It wasn't for a performance bonus or a solved problem. It was for the effort, for the new, fragile context of their connection. The terms are acceptable, Lin repeated, his voice quieter. Now let's discuss the mood board. I was thinking about the typography. Shun listened. He offered his thoughts when asked. He deferred to Lin's expertise. It was a collaboration. A transaction, yes. But one built on a new, hard-won understanding. Lin Yu was off the clock. He was his own man. And Shun Yuan was no longer an ATM, a tyrant, or a romantic lead in a canned story. He was a client. A complicated, trying, learning client. And for now, in the sun-drenched cafe, with the work of creation beginning between them, that was enough. It was more than enough. It was the beginning of something honest. Something new. Something entirely their own. Epilogue. 1 year later. The annual Shun Corporation Gala was a glittering spectacle of wealth and power. Shun Yuan, from his place at the head table, endured it with slightly less disdain than usual. His eyes, as they often did, scanned the crowd until they found a familiar, calm figure near the back. Lin Yu stood by the grand ice sculpture, a phoenix this year, holding a tablet. He was technically a consultant now, hired to oversee the event's design and flow. He was being paid an obscene hourly rate, and his contract specified he could leave at 9 p.m. sharp. At 8:58 p.m., Shun excused himself and made his way over. The phoenix is leaking, Shun noted, watching a drip erode the sculpture's talon. A metaphor for unsustainable opulence, Lin replied without looking up from his tablet. My invoice will be submitted at midnight. Of course. Shun paused. There's a situation in the West Wing gallery. Lin's eyes narrowed. The situation had better not involve misplaced feelings, a jealous rival, or a sprained ankle requiring a dramatic carry. It involves the modern art installation, Shun said, a smile threatening his composure. The one you curated. It's interacting with a guest. They arrived at the gallery to find Bai Shui, radiant in a gold dress, standing before a large kinetic sculpture made of polished brass balances. It was designed to shift gently with air currents. Currently, it was not shifting gently. It was whirring, clanking, and swinging in frantic, aggressive arcs. Cowering behind a potted fern was Charles Wan, the rival CEO, his tie snagged on one of the sculpture's lower levers. Every time he twitched, the sculpture went berserk. He called it derivative capitalist drivel, Bai Shui explained brightly to Lin. And then he poked it. I think it's offended. Lin sighed, the sigh of a master whose work has been tampered with by Philistines. He approached the machine, studied its mechanisms for a 3 count, then delivered a precise, gentle tap to his central pivot. The sculpture whirred, sighed, and settled into a slow, graceful dance. Charles Wan scrambled free, his dignity in tatters. Thank you, Shun said low to Lin. It's in my contract. Troubleshooting of art-related incidents, Lin stated. He checked his watch. 9 p.m. My time is now my own. He turned to leave. Shun fell in a step beside him, not as his boss, but as a man leaving his own party. I was thinking, Shun said as they stepped into the cool night air, the sounds of the gala muffled behind them. My penthouse has a terrible, impersonal view. I need a mural, something to humanize the space. Lin stopped, raising an eyebrow. You're commissioning interior design now. I'm commissioning you, Shun said. The theme is a fox in a nebula, but at peace. No rush. Unlimited revisions. Your rates triple, and you must work on-site, during which time I will be present, quiet, and will provide superior snacks. I will not comment on the creative process unless asked for feedback, which I will give constructively. Lin looked at him, at the desperate, hopeful, utterly unhinged specificity of the offer. The unspoken plea. Let me be near you while you do the thing you love. I will be good. I will be quiet. I will pay you triple. A slow, real smile spread across Lin Yu's face, lit by the city lights. It was the smile Shun had once gone to war to see. The snacks will be contractually stipulated, Lin said finally, turning to walk down the street. And you get 3 feedback comments total. Use them wisely. Shun Yuan, billionaire CEO, hurried to catch up, already mentally drafting a clause about artisanal cheese platters. The gala, the phoenix, the entire glittering empire faded behind them. Ahead was something much better, a negotiation.